Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the National Park Development Control Committee meeting for March. I will start with the usual introductions, especially for people who may have not been here before and for those people who will be watching online. My name is Mark Kidd. I'm chair of the committee, and sitting to my right here is Andrew Smith, Head of Development Management. Sitting to Andrew's right is Kevin Richards, Planning Manager, and to Kevin's right is Phil Nichols, who's one of the case officers. He'll be taking us through the first application we've got today. To my left is Daniel Milliken. He's our legal advisor and will be running the timer for the public speaking. And to Daniel's left is Helen Hooper, who's the Democratic Services Officer or Member Services Coordinator. Yes, I always get that wrong. And most importantly, to my left and to my right are the members of the committee who will be making the decisions on the applications we've got in front of us today. So there's not that many of us today, members. There are some apologies from members that can't be here. Helen?
Yes, we've got apologies from Andy Pratt and Jim Jackson this morning.
Okay. Members, we've got the minutes from last meeting, which I trust you've all gone through. There's just one minor amendment to put on there. There was at 1526 a TPO that was 486. It should be 487, and rather than be put in tree preservation orders confirmed, it should have been tree preservation orders made. So subject to that minor amendment, is everyone okay with the minutes, and can I sign them off? Yeah, thank you. There's a lot of pages here.
Chair, from point of accuracy, I would abstain from the vote on the minutes because I wasn't at that meeting.
Fine. So many pages, it feels like a very long meeting. Okay, right. A couple of announcements before we get into the meeting proper, the usual ones. We're not expecting a fire alarm today, so if you do hear something that sounds like a fire alarm, please treat it as the real thing. And the procedure to do is follows. Go out of this door to my left, those two white doors there. One of the members will open them, and then to walk around the building in a clockwise direction and assemble in the car park out front. Also got to announce that the meeting is live streamed on YouTube and it'll stay on YouTube as a record of what the meeting's been like today. And lastly, if you've got a mobile phone or a device of some sort, if you could turn it on to silent, please. Members, declarations of interest. Does anyone have a declaration of interest to make? I'll start with Rick.
Yeah, Chair, I've got item 5, the application in Ennerdale. I'm on the parish council. I was at the meeting when it was discussed. I'm previously offered a direct opinion on the proposal.
Okay, so you still going to take part in the...
I'm available, yeah.
Okay.
I may well abstain.
Right. Okay. Peter.
Item number 3, I know the applicant, as we're both directors of the Keswick Tourist Association.
Right. However, that's not a pecuniary interest and you can still take part should you wish. Right. Okay. Right, thank you very much, members. Next item on the agenda is questions of a general nature. So we don't have any questions raised under Standing Order 14.2 relating to the business of the committee today. And also on public participation, there's no public questions, petitions or deputations of a general nature. We will have some public speaking on the individual planning applications. So next item on the agenda is site inspection. So I'll ask Andrew first if he's any site inspections proposed for the committee.
No, nothing to recommend.
Members, do you wish to propose any site visits? No? Okay. So now we're into our planning applications. So normally we take the planning applications which have public speaking first and then proceed in a numerical order. I'd just like to go through the order, members, if I could. So the first one, number 1, which we would normally start, the Robin Hood Farm at Bassenthwaite, that's been recommended to be deferred because a piece of information has popped up that is sort of material to the application and an email's been circulated. Is it okay to defer that? Do you wish to defer that to a future meeting? Yeah. So now, then we normally go into number 2. However, I believe Mr. Sleeth who is speaking isn't available till a bit later, is it okay to take that as the last of our public speaking? So that would mean our first application will be number 3 on our list, which is Laurel Bank, Penrith Road in Keswick. And Phil's going to take us through this one.
Thank you, Chair. So this application seeks planning permission for the change of use of Laurel Bank Guest House into a flexible use, allowing its continued use as a guest house, its use as a self-contained holiday let, or its use as a residential home. The application is before committee today because recommendation of approval is contrary to the views of the Town Council. So the application site is a end terrace, the terrace of 4 properties. The westernmost property, it's located off Penrith Road on the eastern entrance into Keswick. Closer site plan shows the application site and building outlined in red, and the 3 neighbouring properties to the east. So the property immediately attached is used as a guest house. That's Burnside Guest House. To the next one along is Brookfield Guest House, and then the end property, the furthest east property, is occupied, to my knowledge, as a residential property. To the west is Brackenray, and to the north is Cider House, both detached properties. Again, my understanding is they are residential properties. To the rear of the application site is a large parking area. So this photo shows the main view from the Penrith Road, 2.5-storey Victorian end terrace property. Access down the side for vehicles leads to a parking area and garage that are associated with the application site. This is look backing towards the buildings. On the furthest right hand side is the application building. This area is associated with the guest house and is primarily used as its parking area. Moving closer to the properties itself, this shows the close relationship between the application building and the neighbouring guest house and further properties to the east. And then that's a yard that's associated with the application dwelling. So that's just a bit of a summary of the site itself. The main considerations are primarily whether this in principle is acceptable and whether there are any wider impacts arising from the proposal. The principle of development is supported by policy. Both policies 15 and 18 support the flexible change of use of guest houses to other forms of holiday accommodation and residential properties. So the principle of development is acceptable. The main issue is whether the proposed uses, primarily the holiday let use, would have an acceptable impact on the amenity of the neighbouring properties and businesses. In my view, the context of the site, so the end of terrace nature of the property, together with the varied uses surrounding that site, which include other forms of holiday accommodation, mean that the associated activity with the proposed holiday lets in particular would not lead to an unacceptable impact on the amenity of the adjoining neighbours and businesses. I therefore recommend approval subject to conditions laid out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Members, any questions for Phil? No, Phil, just to clarify, so this potentially could be used as either a holiday let or as a residence, a proper house. If it was a holiday let, what's the sort of maximum number of people that could possibly use it if somebody booked it for like a party or something?
So, I mean, it'd be dictated on how they essentially divvy up the space. At the moment, there are 5 guest bedrooms plus the owner's accommodation. So, again, it depends on how they split up the spaces, but conceivably up to 6 bedrooms. My understanding is they are double bedrooms. So, you're looking around the kind of 10 to 12 kind of
around 10 people. And you've got in your report you would recommend to remove the permitted development right, so that would mean somebody couldn't just put an outbuilding in the back somewhere. Would that cover things like hot tubs maybe, or
it depends whether or not they are classed as outbuildings? So you could consider whether it's appropriate to remove the ability to construct things that may not conceivably being active developments, so hot tubs, small kind of outbuildings that may not in themselves require planning permission.
Any questions, members, before we go for our public speaking? No. Well, we do have some public speaking for this application. So our first public speaker is Councillor Harwood from the Town Council. If you'd like to come up. I'll just go through the public speaking for everyone. I think you've been here before as well, but I'll just run through it for all the people who may have not seen it before. So basically, there's 5 minutes to speak. Once you've finished speaking, if you go over the 5 minutes, we'll let you know. Once you finish speaking, if you just sort of remain in your seat in case members have any questions for you. And when you're ready to speak, just press the microphone button. Okay.
I'm here speaking on behalf of Keswick Town Council. I've got this prepared statement that we've agreed with fellow councillors actually in response to this application. But on a personal note, I am making a heartfelt plea on behalf of all residents who have been impacted by living in close proximity to a guest house, which has changed to a holiday let use with no on-site management. We are not too far apart from the recommendation to approve the change of use application for Laurel Bank, as we support 90% of the planning officer's report with one key exception. Condition 3 of the recommendation includes the option short-term holiday letting accommodation, and then in brackets with or without manager's accommodation, which shall only be occupied for the purposes of short-term holiday letting and shall not be occupied by any one individual, family or group for a period exceeding 35 days in any calendar year. It is the without manager's accommodation which we have consistently objected to as a town council. We fully accept local plan policy 18, which states that proposals seeking to change guest houses to different forms of holiday accommodation is a reasonable proposition. However, this should also be considered in conjunction with local plan policy 06, which imposes a responsibility to ensure that any proposal should not have an unacceptable impact on the amenity of adjoining residents. It is our view that the change from a guest house use, which is overseen by on-site owners stroke managers, is significantly different to a holiday let accommodation with no on-site control. In 2024, in response to numerous complaints received about antisocial behaviour, the Town Council instigated a holiday house nuisance report as a means where complaints could be recorded in such situations. There's enormous frustration that there is no direct contact for enforcement action to address such situations. We understand the premise that it is unreasonable to conclude that antisocial behaviour will result when such change of use applications are approved. Copies of the holiday nuisance reports received were provided on previous applications, which shows that this does happen at a significant level. If you take a step back and think about it, the number of changes in those using holiday let accommodation over a year is significant, which suggests there is a high probability that adjoining residents will be impacted at some times. It seems to us entirely reasonable when considering a change of use that to safeguard adjoining residents, this should only be allowed when on-site management is provided, giving the same level of control as applies for a guest house. In the post-COVID period up to late 2023, there were approximately 35 similar change of use applications to holiday lets, which were approved despite our objections. We thought we were at least being listened to when in November 2023, a similar change of use application was made for 23 Eskin Street in Keswick. This was for the first time refused permission in March 2024 following our representations, including the holiday nuisance reports available at that time. An appeal was lodged in September 2024, which was dismissed in March 2025, with the likely impact on adjoining residents cited as a main reason. We thought common sense had prevailed, but in June 2025, a similar application was made at 19 Church Street, Keswick, which was approved in September 2025, with a similar wording to the holiday let option now proposed on this application. Many parts of Blencathra Street, Helvellyn Street, Wordsworth Street, Eskin Street feel blighted by the high number of previously approved applications. I would urge you to take the same stand you applied to 23 Eskin Street, Keswick, and only approve the holiday let option if on-site management is provided. I know you feel like you're acting in the best of intentions, but the impact on those affected continues to be significant. Please stand up for neighbours rather than just considering the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Have we any questions? Councillor Harwood? No? Okay. Well, oh, yes, Peter.
The town council has done a very good job in collating information and that whole reporting structure, and I thank you for that. Have you got examples of complaints of antisocial behaviour outside of the back streets area, or is it all in the back streets?
It's virtually in every application that have been before you, but it was only in the recent ones.
I meant in the reports that you have received and collated from neighbours and residents.
Yeah.
Are the complaints all of accommodation in the back streets, or are they across Keswick?
No, it's across Keswick. It really is across Keswick.
No more questions? Well, thank you very much, Councillor Harwood. If I could ask you to return to your seat.
Would you just be able to press the button on the microphone before you return to your seat? Thank you.
So our next public speaker is Mr. Lovett, who's the applicant. If you could come forward. So same process again, Mr. Lovett. That's 5 minutes to speak, and once you finish, there might be some questions. And whenever you're ready, just press the microphone button.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for giving me the time to come before you and speak on behalf of this application. I would just like to add something to the report that was missing. It was a mission by myself, so the officer wasn't aware. And this was with regard to the marketing exercise. My property has been on the market now for 10 months. I've spoke to a number of estate agents, both prior, and we've actually changed to try and get more people coming to view. During that 10 months, we have had 2 viewings. Neither of which were interested in a bed and breakfast type business. These were both parties that want to do residential. The reason for the application and the change of variance is also because I spoke to 3 different estate agents in the local area, and also Colliers and International and Christie's & Co, who are all the experts in this area, who have all said the same thing to me, in that the B&B market is not dead, but it is very, very, very slow. The tourist in the area and the type of tourist is changing, and their needs have changed, and they are now looking for a different type of accommodation. So therefore, the bed and breakfast type situation is now difficult. It is not dead by any means, but it is certainly nowhere near what it used to be at the Heights. I agree with everything, obviously, in the report, as I would, because it's been recommended, but to point out that Brookfield, which is next door but 1 to us, had permission for it to be changed to a holiday let. They didn't take it up in the end. So therefore, if this is accepted and it does change to a holiday let, it wouldn't change any of the mix in the particular area. I understand the issues about possibility of noise, but quite frankly, there's possibility of noise from anybody and any type of accommodation. Certainly, as was mentioned, down in the town centre, as it were, where it is very closed in, there is lots of issues there. But I would say from the area where we are, with that mix, the idea of big parties, etc., doesn't happen. In the 12 years that I have been in my particular accommodation, I have had 1 occasion where I've heard noise and had to go and talk about it. So I don't think it is a big thing. With regards to managers on site, Yes, it is an option, absolutely. But as the current regulation states, if I wanted to, I could carry on running the B&B and not be on site as a manager. So I don't think that can actually work to insist on that. The other thing I would note as well is that, you know, what I'm trying to do here is not to create another business, not to make things bigger. We are looking to retire. So clearly we want to be able to market our property and our business in as flexible a way as possible to ensure that we do get a buyer. I've already mentioned something about varying types and reacting to market trends. I think we need to do that. Local band 6 manager on site. There is just as likely to be noise from a residential house as there is on others. The other thing I point out, I am a resident, me and my wife are residents of Keswick. There has been, my knowledge, one objection, which is our next door neighbour, which we know very well. We haven't got a problem with each other. So there isn't a history of real noise and real problems with the existing holiday lets that are inside that area. Finally, the thing that surprised me with the objections from the town council, etc., nobody from the town council has come to see me or visit the site in the same way that I understand the planner has, to see what are the real issues in that area and are there any. And like I say, one complaint from my next door neighbour as opposed to 10 or 12 that they tend to get down in the town, I think makes the difference. Thank you for your time, and I can hope you see your way to accepting the officer's recommendation, and I fully agree and accept all the conditions that are imposed in that letter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lovett. Members, any questions? No, thank you very much, Mr. Lovett. I can ask you to return to your seat. Okay, members, this is the part where we discuss the case, and then ultimately somebody makes a proposal, somebody seconds it, we have a vote, and that decides what the result is. So who would like to start us off? Rick.
It's more a question than anything. If there was management accommodation within the property and it was being used as a holiday let, could we actually require that the management accommodation is occupied whilst the holiday let is in operation, or that the holiday let ceases if there's no one in the accommodation? Is it possible to do that?
I mean, as conditions worded at the moment, it allows flexibility for a manager to live on site or not. Were we of the view that to make the scheme acceptable, you needed permanent on-site management, you could write the condition in a way that requires a manager to be on site. But our view is that it's acceptable as with the either or.
I think where I can see your concern, Rick, though, in terms of how you can. I don't think you can make the accommodation be provided, but I don't think you can go so far as to require somebody to be present within that property at all times, day and night. I think that I'd struggle with the reasonableness of that.
Chris.
Do I understand that the next door neighbour but one already has consent for multiple use?
Kind of. So next door neighbour but one got permission in 2022 to become a holiday let. They did not implement that permission to my knowledge, and that permission will have fallen away because of the 3-year time limit on it. So it remains a guest house at the moment, and there is no extant permission for a different use.
Yeah, I think the other thing, just in terms of, I guess, for your benefit, Chris, the timeline of things. So, as Mr. Harwood set out, The policy was adopted when the local plan came on in 2021, and that sets this sort of presumption in principle that you can change from a guest house to holiday letting use, and we approved numerous of them since 2022. The parish council have been out and gathered evidence, which Mr. Harwood's explained, that post dates that permission, and that is that evidence of impacts of these uses elsewhere. So that is something that is different since the 2022 permission next door but one was granted.
But that survey hasn't consistently affected our decisions.
It's still a site-by-site assessment. So we have refused some where the circumstances are we think warrant that, and we have approved them in other places, be it in Keswick or elsewhere, where we think the site-specific factors warrant it as well, hence the recommendation here. So it's evidence to take into account, absolutely material, but it doesn't push you one way or the other, but you should consider it.
So ultimately, I think with this case, it's whether using that building as a holiday let is going to cause unacceptable harm to the amenity of neighbouring properties. I think that's the crux of this one. Rick?
Yeah, one of the problems sometimes with these holiday lets is parking, and it's on the terrace street, and that does cause an issue. Here we've got parking available. Should we be conditioning the retention of that parking if it's a holiday let? Because that way we can get the parking off street.
Peter?
When an application like this is submitted that proposes 3 alternative uses, is it permissible to refuse one of the uses?
I think because they're applying for a flexible use which allows that continuing interchange between the three, I think it's a package. So I think if you I would be minded if you thought one of the three elements was unacceptable. So you're content with the guest house because it's already a guest house. You were content with the permanent home, but you had issue with the holiday let. I would refuse it. Yeah, I'd refuse it on that basis.
It's in the title of the application. I don't think you can change it at this stage. It'd have to be in fresh one. Any other questions, members? Any other discussion points? It's a difficult one. Judgment one. That's why it's come to committee. I'll be looking for someone to start us off, really, making a proposal one way or the other. Rick?
Yeah, I think that in the circumstances, and Peter's alluded to it, of this particular site and this particular property with adequate parking, that it can be seen to work in the tight and knit terraces that exist within bed and breakfast land in Keswick. There could be issues, but I think in this particular circumstance, on balance, it's acceptable.
Can I take that as a proposal from you, Rick?
Yes.
But that's subject to a parking condition. Okay. Who's going next? Did you want to say, Chris? Second. Okay. Peter, did you want to say anything?
If we do vote to approve, can I recommend a condition that precludes hot tubs outside?
Is yeah, I'll go back to Rick about that because he's proposing it, but I'll just check with the officers. Is that possible? Bearing in mind of hot tubs, like some of them, you just blow them up and stick them in the garden.
Yeah,
It's possible. Yeah.
Could I also, and this is a bit vaguer, you could potentially create a outside covered pagoda barbecue space, which would also encourage outside socializing, which would be undesirable from a disturbance point of view. Could you preclude that?
Would that not be in the permitted development?
Yeah, so
description?
Condition 4 at the moment removes permitted development rights to
What about pagoda thing? Is it development?
But what could conceivably be built is anything that doesn't represent an active development, which is what we're trying to control through the hot development. So you could conceivably try and control everything.
Surely a pagoda has volume and therefore it's an extension. If you had a pagoda, you wouldn't need permission to put walls on it.
I think I suppose I'm wondering about something that wouldn't be an active development, taking into account size, permanence, physical attachments. You know, something that you just get from the shop and it comes in a box that's like that big and it's just some telescopic poles and you put it together and it's got a cover on and then you just weight it down. That would, you know, give that undercover outside space, and if you put it next to the boundary or next to the back boundary. So I think you'd be having to describe something, so notwithstanding the provisions of section 55 which relates to development, you'd be trying to capture any cover or sighting of any cover or canopy, something like that.
Can you say garden furniture
Or otherwise.
I think the points Peter's making is basically don't want things necessarily put in that's going to cause people to congregate there, create noise and disturbance.
You can in the garden though.
Yeah. Would those things be okay with you, Rick? Because you would propose, yeah, hot tubs and covered garden accessories.
Yeah, can
we
is it okay? I understand what you're trying to achieve. I think we'll need to have a think about the wording of a condition to get it right.
You know the intent there.
Yeah, I understand the intent.
Okay.
We'll have a reflection.
And that's okay. Second that, Chris. Anyone wish to say anything else before we go for a vote? We've got a proposal and a seconding. Anyone? No? Okay, so we've got a proposal from Rick Atherley, seconded by Chris Southward, that we grant as per officer's permission, as officer's recommendation, subject to a parking condition, a condition relating to hot tubs and a condition relating to covered gathering area things, which we will delegate to the officers to flesh out. Yeah, we know the intention. It's for the amenity. All those in favour?
That's 5 in favour. That's
Yeah.
approved with conditions.
And poor Phil can't vote because he came in slightly after. So that's that one. Thank you very much, members. So our next application, which we'll go straight into, don't think we need a break yet, is number 4 on our list. That's Rivington, Vicarage Hill and Keswick. Abigail is going to come and tell us about it.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks planning permission for a 2-storey extension at Rivington, as well as a dormer addition on the front roof and the installation of solar panels to the rear roof. This application is before committee today because the recommendation of approval is contrary to the Town Council's objection. Members will note that condition 4 within the report required a sample of the single ply membrane to be used on the dormer roofs to be submitted and approved by the authority. Since writing the report, the applicant has sent the sample confirming that the membrane would be a lead grey colour, and I therefore suggest that condition 4 be amended to secure the use of this colour. The site is located in Great Crosthwaite, just north of Keswick. The site is accessed off Vicarage Hill with an area of woodland to the east. The character of the area is varied with a mixture of 1970s rendered bungalows, stone-faced dwellings and some Grade 2 listed buildings. These are the existing floor plans at Rivington, and these are the proposed plans. And they show the proposed works, which include a 2-storey side extension to the east and a dormer on the north elevation. So these are existing elevations. The dwelling is constructed of rendered walls with a local green slate pitched roof, and there is an existing dormer loft extension on the south elevation with slate tile hanging walls. And these are the proposed elevations, and there are various works proposed, which include, so the proposed side extension would be 2-storey and use materials to match existing. As you can see on the east elevation, it wouldn't cover the entire gable, so it would have a stepped ridge line to the south. The extension would connect to the proposed dormer on the north elevation, which would have slate hanging walls and a single ply membrane roof. And the existing dormer roof would also be replaced with a single ply membrane. On the west elevation, this elevation would be clad with random stone and solar panels would be added to the existing dormer roof. And there are also various alterations to the fenestration being proposed. So this is a view of the north elevation of Rivington when approaching from the east side of Vicarage Hill. The proposed dormer would be located on this elevation, but it would be offset away from the road and partially screened by the trees. This is the main view of the dwelling from the driveway entrance, showing the west elevation, which is proposed to be stone-faced, and turning around on the other side of the driveway, you can see the neighbouring dwelling, which is also stone-faced. Turning back, this is, again, you can see the north elevation. And this is also the north elevation from the other side. And this is where the proposed dormer would be located on. Turning around, this is the view from the proposed dormer towards the road. And it's partially screened by trees and it's set back from neighbouring dwellings. This is the east elevation around the back, where the 2-storey side extension is proposed. And this is the south elevation, which looks towards the garden. This elevation is not publicly visible. So in summary, I consider the main issues to be the impact on the character of the area and the impact on neighbouring amenity. The proposed side extension would vary in form from the main dwelling, however, it would have limited public visibility. The addition of a second large dormer would result in some harm to the dwelling, however, it would be offset from the road with intervening trees and it would have slate hanging walls to match existing. Overall, given the non-traditional nature of the existing dwelling and the limited architectural merit of the surrounding area, I consider that the visual impact of the proposals on the character of the area would be acceptable. Given the separation distance of the dwelling from any neighbouring dwellings, I'm satisfied that the proposals would not result in any harmful impacts on amenity. So overall, I recommend that the application be approved, subject to the conditions set out in the report and the amendment of condition 4. Thanks.
Thank you, Abigail. Members, any questions for Abigail? Doug.
Thank you very much for that. Can I just have confirmation of the third photo down on the site? Which property? That one.
Mm.
Which one that is on the map?
That is the Muse.
Good. Yes, but thank you.
Any other questions? No. Bill?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that report. Yeah, just looking at the other houses in the area, we don't have any pictures of Fernacre and the Laybeck Hotel, because it strikes me that probably most of the houses are sort of 1970s, 1960s, what have become traditional Lake District houses now, which is like the one we're considering. So is it a fairly modern area with lots of newish houses?
Not generally. So you can see that kind of in the distance. There's a row of 1970s style bungalows. That's the most modern buildings. And then there are some Grade 2 listed buildings which are older. And I think the Muse, these are also slightly older. But that's the most modern it is.
Great. Abigail, could you go back just a couple of slides from the north elevation from the road? That's it. Yeah. So that's the council verge wall. I'm guessing that's not in the property. Those trees, or the further trees are, aren't they? It's one of the concerns of the town council is that the roof. They're not against the extension, but the roof is slightly odd to them, out of character. They're saying, however, there are some screening from those trees. I just wonder if are they within the property?
I don't believe the trees are in the property boundary. I think they're in the neighbouring woodland area.
Right. Okay. If there's no more questions, members, we'll go to our public speaking. We have got Mr. Reeve, who's the agent. Mr. Reeve, yep, come on up. So, Mr. Reeve, you've seen it, but I'll just go through it quickly again. 5 minutes to speak. Whenever you're ready, press the microphone button. If you go over the 5 minutes, we'll let you know, and there might be some questions afterwards.
Thank you, Committee, for listening to me. The Town Council's objection is probably understandable to some extent, because flat-roofed dormers are not particularly well liked, particularly within the town centre. This is a sort of general policy, and I just wanted to reinforce the planning officer's report that this is quite an isolated building. It is built, I think, in the early 80s. It was approved with an extension, a dormer extension on the south elevation, which is not exactly a flat roofed a dormer. It has a slope on it. We are proposing something similar on the north elevation, and it is very well hidden from view generally. The trees there is on two sides of it. It is impossible to to see that part of the building. It's just from the entrance where you would be able to see some of it, and the application is to stone clad that ugly looking gable at the moment to make it more in keeping with the buildings around it, which are more traditional. I just wanted to reinforce is that I hope the committee goes with the planning officer's report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, members? No. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Reeve. If I can ask you to return your seat. So, members, into our discussion. Peter.
Thanks, Mark. So this is before us because the objection of Keswick Town Council, and it's a shame that Councillor Harwood don't think it stayed to listen to our debate and discussion, which is a shame. And I think that the proposed changes with the stone cladding, improve the overall appearance of the property, and the design changes that Keswick object to, I think, are not significant, and I don't agree with their particular criticism of that design element, and I see merit in the officer's proposal. So no other questions at this point.
Anyone else? Chris? Oh, Phil.
Yeah. I'm up to.
Propose, right? Anyone wish to say anything else? Anyone wish to second that? Contrary that? Chris, second that? Yeah, Doug? Yeah. Oh, okay, right. I'll take Chris's. Yeah, I don't see a special harm from putting the dormer on the north elevation there. It's screened. It's not particularly harmful, so I would agree with that. So we've got a proposal from Phil Dixon, seconded by Chris Southwood, that we grant as per officer's recommendation. All those in favour?
That's unanimously approved.
Okay, members, we've done 2 applications. Does anyone want a 5-minute break, or do you want to go through the next application first? Yeah, everyone okay? Do you want to break now or after? Everyone okay? Go for another one? Right. So now our next application is number 5 on the list, and we are going to Beckfoot Farm at Ennerdale. And Kelsey is the case officer for this one.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is an application for 2 polytunnels in the garden of Beckfoot Farm in Ennerdale. The application is before committee, as my recommendation to approve with conditions is contrary to the objections of Ennerdale and Kinneside Parish Council. So the application site is located to the north of Ennerdale Water, about 3 miles east of Ennerdale Bridge, and a bridleway runs along the lake shore to the south of the application site. So a closer view of the application site, the red line indicates the location of the polytunnels and the blue line is the location of the proposed on-site BNG. So some views of the site. The left-hand photo is taken from the unclassified road, which lies to the north of the application site. Photos taken looking south towards Ennerdale Water. The rendered building you can see is Beckfoot Farmhouse, with the attached bank barn in stone and slate. The application site lies to the right of the farmhouse behind that hedge that you can see. The right-hand photo is taken from the track which runs along the southern edge of the application site. So the photo is taken looking north into the site. That's probably the closest view you get into the application site, through that gap in the hedge where the gate is. So these photos are taken both from within the application site, within the garden of Beckfoot. The left-hand photo is taken looking east towards the farmhouse. You can see an existing small polytunnel, and then to the right there's a domestic oil tank. And then in the right-hand photo, stood in front of the house looking west into the application site towards the proposed location. And then you can just see the well-established vegetation that runs around the boundary of the site. So the proposed plans, so it's 2 polytunnels that are proposed. They have an area of 55 metres squared each and height of 2.5 metres. Both of a fairly standard polytunnel design and appearance, but given their location within an enclosed site, not visibly visible in public views, and located in close proximity to existing buildings, the proposals are considered acceptable in relation to their impact on the character of the area. The Parish Council have raised concerns about the future use of the existing dwelling on site. There's no proposed change of use for the dwelling or the attached bank barn. The site has been owned by the National Trust since the 1950s, and it appears it will remain so, but any future owners of the site could remove the structures if they felt that that's something they wanted to do. So the application is recommended for approval with conditions.
Thank you, Kelsey. Any questions, members? No. Shall we go straight into our public speaking for this one? We have Mrs. Oakley, who's the applicant, and Mr. Pierce is here for any questions as well. So 5 minutes to speak. Whenever you're ready, press the button, and if you go over, we'll let you know.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to present a statement of support for planning application 7/2025-4019. The Beckfoot is a National Trust property on the north side of Ennerdale Water. As you will have seen from the case report, the proposal is to erect 2 polytunnels to grow trees and flowers for local cultivation, then planting in the wider valley. This supports many organisational strategic policies from both the National Park and the National Trust around the themes of climate, nature and people. In particular, improving biodiversity and ecological resilience in the valley, as detailed in the Floral Enrichment Programme, which was part of the application plan. It supports volunteer engagement and reuse of a currently vacant site. I reference figure 5.3 in particular in the case report, which states that the cultivation of plants and wildflowers to diversify the floral attributes of the valley would align with the overarching aims of the development plan when read as a whole. In particular, the National Park's first purpose, to conserve and enhance the natural beauty, wildlife and cultural heritage, and the aims of policy number 4, to achieve bigger, better, more joined up and resilient habitats and improve the function of ecosystems. The latter policy incorporates a statement from Sir John Lawton back in 2010 in his Making Space for Nature report, which has become familiar to many of us as a key driver for nature recovery ambitions. We note the one objection from Ennerdale and Kinnyside Parish Council. This was based on 4 main points, which we would respond to as follows. Number 1, commercialisation of the site. There are no commercial proposals within this application. The proposed polytunnels are small in scale and the site will be tended by a small group of local volunteers. Number 2, visual impact. We acknowledge the polytunnels may be visible from some of the surrounding high fells. However, it will be at a considerable distance in the context of a wider panoramic view. This will be of minimal impact in the garden setting, which is screened by established planting and should be considered in the context of neighbouring adjacent farms and associated infrastructure. The site is screened from the Lakeshore Path. We do not agree that this would cause harm to the visual amenity and special qualities of the National Park. Number 3, loss of housing stock. We would wish to emphasise that the proposal does not constitute a change of use. The Beckfoot site has sat empty and deteriorating for a number of years. This small-scale proposal offers an opportunity to breathe life back into this setting and does not constrain the National Trust from future considerations for this property. The main house needs significant investment, which the National Trust does not currently have available. Number 4, unsuitable location. The location is suitable for the proposed purpose as it offers a sheltered site where B&G can also be delivered and is well suited for the Wild Ennerdale volunteers to grow stock from seed, then move the trees and flowers up the valley. Thinking more widely, the Beckfoot proposal offers a welcome addition to the growing network of small-scale tree nursery sites in Cumbria, which, in turn, aids our combined efforts of supporting nature recovery, people engagement, improved ecological diversity and landscape resilience within the National Park. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions, members? No, no questions at the minute. Thank you very much. You could just switch your microphone off as you go back. Brilliant. So, members, who would like to get us going? 2 polytunnels. Peter? Yeah.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for the going through the parish council's objections there. That's very helpful. I think the parish council's objections are utterly without merit. I think that the if I may, I think that I disagree with all of the parish council's objections. I'm happy to clarify. On the issue of visual impact in particular, I think you could either have the visual impact of the polytunnels, but if you removed the visual impact of the polytunnels, you'd also remove the visual impact of the thousands of trees and plants that could be grown there and developed and grown in the environment in the following years. So I fully agree with the officer's recommendations, and I'm happy to support this proposal.
Do you want to propose it now? Oh, no, everyone will get a chance. We'll leave it at that. Who'd like to go next? Doug, is that you?
Thank you. Yes, it was very helpful indeed, going through the parish council's objections in order to give more of a, I suppose, a wider view of the application and its context within the environment and the panorama as a whole. So that was very helpful when linked in with the report, which I think covered most of the ideas put forward by the parish council, which, whilst I would not agree with Peter's wording, I do feel were specifically answered both in the report and in the public speaking. So I would be happy to second this, to second that motion, to go with the officer's report on the basis of it not being detrimental to either usage of the house or the wider landscape as a whole. So
we may take that as a proposal, Doug. I don't think Peter proposed.
do you not propose? Okay, that's
We'll take you as the proposer. Just looking for the conditions, Kelsey. There's nothing on there to remove them. Should they not be used anymore? No.
So we can add that. I think given the lack of landscape harm that's been identified, I'm not sure what the harm in retaining would be.
Yeah, just clarifying that. Who'd like to go next, Rick?
Yeah, I'm a member of the parish council. I was at the meeting when it was discussed. I share a view that these will not have an adverse landscape and visual impact on the area. I think the prime concern is potentially more with the use of the property as opposed to the erection of the 2 polytunnels. And this application, if it's only for 2 polytunnels, it's what it is.
Okay. Anyone else? Yeah, I'm quite supportive. I mean, the growing, this essentially meant the forestry, horticulture, which is supported, especially as it, encourage rebuilding nature in the area. The only issue with polytunnels is the visual nature of them. They're quite, stick out in the landscape sometimes, but this is pretty well screened. I wouldn't have a problem with it, despite the parish council comments. So we've got a proposal from Doug Rathbone. Anyone wish to second? Peter, wish to second that? Any other comments before we go to the vote? No? Okay, all those in favour? All against? Abstain?
That's 5 in approved. That's approved.
So the permission has been granted. Okay, members, we've got 5 minutes and then we'll come back, and our next application, when we come back after 5 minutes, will be the site at High Green, Troutbeck. Okay, welcome back everyone. Our next planning application before us is number 6 on the list. That's site at High Green, Troutbeck, and Ben has come down to take us through it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is an application to erect a single dwelling on a site in the Troutbeck Village, Troutbeck Conservation Area. Location is High Green, which is towards the northern end of the linear village of Troutbeck. This is a plan which shows the site in a bit more close focus. Also shows some of the constraints. So the site is a relatively flat portion of land within the conservation area. There are listed buildings in the vicinity between it and the village road, and there's a network of bridleways which have an unsealed surface which serve the site and adjacent dwelling houses. This is an illustration taken from the conservation area appraisal. The site is that towards the centre of the location. You'll see that important open space within the conservation area is identified on the plan there in the green. Important buildings identified in both the red and the blue, and important views also noted there. The location of the proposed development is on the footprint of those agricultural buildings, which are shown in that buff pink colour, just to the north of that star. So in terms of aerial view to view it, the site is again, as I say, essentially flat portion of land which sits to the east of the cluster of buildings that make up High Green. There is a modern, or a couple of modern agricultural buildings on the site at the northern end. The remainder of the site has the character and designation as an orchard, a former orchard, which has obviously lost some of the density of planting over the years. So again, this is a close-up of the site, the location. You'll see the modern agricultural buildings marked there, trees, and the access track coming into the site. Character-wise, flat land, some a fair degree of screening on the boundaries. The existing building, which obviously is a modern agricultural building, which does not contribute positively to the character of the conservation area. Some screening which separates it from the views in from the east, and again back to the towards the access point. This site has been subject to a number of planning applications in the past. This is a previously submitted proposal for 5 dwellings on the site, which was refused at committee, I believe, following a site inspection, and was then subsequently dismissed on an appeal. So that did not progress. The current proposal is to place a single dwelling house on or within the footprint of the existing agricultural buildings on that area of hard land at the northern end of the site. The garden area of the house would be restricted to the area which is shown in white there. The green would be retained as open space, undeveloped and unaltered. Proposed dwelling house is a single dwelling house, stone faced, pitched roof, slate roof. It's of modern character, but picks up some of the cues of traditional architecture in general terms, in terms of its materiality and general form. But it has accommodation primarily at the ground floor, but also 3 bedrooms in the upper floor, and it sits relatively low on the site with the surrounding screening. Layout, so the primary accommodation at ground floor level, 3 bedrooms on the upper floor. So the a 3-bedroom dwelling, but a quite generous 3-bedroom dwelling. So in terms of character, sorry, I'll just stay on that one for a moment. In terms of principle, the site is a village. Policy 15 supports new housing development for local needs. This is submitted as intended to be a local occupancy dwelling house. The 2023 strategic housing needs document indicates that 30% of the need in the South Lakeland area is for 3-bedroom dwelling houses. This would be a 3-bedroom dwelling house for local needs. It is at the upper end of what you might deem to be acceptable in terms of size, 225 square meters. It's a generous dwelling house, but we don't actually have a policy position set down in terms of maximum sizes of dwelling houses. It's a matter of judgment for the committee as to whether the development is going to contribute to meeting the identified housing needs for a 3-bedroom dwelling at the size that's necessary. You'll see that I've concluded that it would satisfy the principle and the housing policy. In terms of character and appearance, you'll see that the area around the site is very much a traditional area, traditional buildings, former barns, dwelling houses, some listed, some not. The site itself is kind of tucked away, and it's not particularly prominent in this part of the village. Again, the site sits to the north of Haystacks there, to the right-hand side in this drawing, so tucked up amongst the trees there. This is probably the site you get the clearest view of it. You can just pick out the agricultural building just sitting to the right of where that arrow's coming down, and those tall trees are actually within the site. Provide the screening from the west side, so you would see the building from that view in the context of the other stone and slate and rendered houses and other buildings in the village of Troutbeck. This is a view from the Garvan Road. Again, from the village, looking back from the vicinity of the Mortal Man, the site's tucked in there. Those tall trees help to identify it, but also to screen it. So again, back to that aerial photograph. So I've taken the view in my assessment that the proposed development is not prominent in the village scene. It doesn't conflict with any of the important views or compromise the character of the conservation area. The important open space designation is not affected by the development because it is kept to the footprint of existing development, and my conclusion is that the development is not harmful to either the character of the conservation area or to the character and appearance of the village. The access to the site has been the subject of some discussion. It is across that network of bridleways and comes into the site at this point. There's a question has been raised about the authority that the applicant has to make use of the bridleways. We consider this to be a separate legal matter to a planning matter, and the applicant would need to ensure that they were confident that they could access the site before they take the risk of erecting a dwelling house in following on from the planning permission. In terms of access, the junction from the main road, the existing access serves in the region of 10 dwelling houses. It is below standards in terms that you wouldn't get 60-metre visibility displays in either direction. However, the proposed development is for one additional dwelling house to be served here from an existing access point. Previous transport information has been submitted which demonstrates that the level of traffic or speed of traffic is low in this vicinity, and therefore I would conclude that the visibility is satisfactory to accommodate one additional dwelling house in this location. In terms of amenity, that kind of comes back to the separation and the planting on the boundaries of the site. Again, concluding no adverse effect. So in terms of a proposed development now for a single dwelling house on the footprint of the existing modern agricultural building within the confines of the village, I consider that the proposal meets the tests of policy and character and appearance and is acceptable in all other regards. So the recommendation is to approve, subject to conditions.
Thank you, Ben. Any questions, members? Rick?
Just as a starter question, when you talk about the highways and the access issue, does the application site include an access to the public highway?
Simple answer, no. The application site, sorry. Yes, simple answer, no. The application site meets the bridleway network, which is public highway, but not public highway for vehicles. So the applicant would need to satisfy themselves that they had authority to bring a vehicle to the site.
Would we not normally expect the application site to include access to the public highway?
It's something that crops up from time to time. The expectation is that it does, but we get a lot of applications which don't.
So on a similar subject, the access through, can you go to the picture of the access from the site from the bridleway with the gate? That one, yeah. So that's the only access to the site currently.
That's correct.
So that's the route that all the construction vehicles would need to take to get on site to build the property.
That's correct, and any agricultural vehicle which currently serves the site.
Do you have a view on whether you could get your average Atkinson truck through that gap?
If the applicant could not get a vehicle of a suitable size to deliver the materials to the site, they would have to find another way of getting the materials to the site. Now, just checking through my recommended conditions. If members felt that a construction method statement was desirable and appropriate, such a condition could be added to the list. I haven't recommend. Oh, sorry. There is a construction method statement submitted with the application. I haven't got the full details in my head, I'm afraid. I haven't got it set out in the papers. A construction method statement has been submitted. That might be a question that the applicant may be able to answer, but they may be in the same position that I am.
Rick again?
Going back to the point I was making about the application site including access to the public highway. But if, for example, we wish to approve a development but see the access improved, increased in width, we could add a condition. It would be normal to see it within the highway. If it doesn't include an access to the public highway, then that is a matter of fact. It doesn't include an access. So potentially we're allowing a house to be built where vehicles will park elsewhere off the highway because they can't access it. And I think it's a very important point within particularly some of these smaller villages where we do show that there is an access to the public highway, and that way we can increase and improve it. Ultimately, these people are going to have delivery wagons.
I suppose my question following on from that is whether it's amenity or whether it's a legal consideration at all.
Okay, so the specific point in terms of improvement of the access, the junction, for instance, to the highway, no, the applicant cannot improve the junction to the highway. This is not within their gift. We would have to accept the application as is. Now, the applicant clearly believes that they have the right and ability to access the site, A, for construction and B, for building. Neighbours or objectors have presented comment to the contrary. We consider that to be a legal matter between the parties, to be resolved between them, and not something for us to get involved with. Now, if members, however, feel that there is insufficient information to satisfy them on access and highway safety grounds, that could be a matter that you come back to in your discussion and deliberations.
My concern is not that it insufficient information, is that it does not include an access. I mean, it's not uncommon for a driveway to be surfaced for the first 5 metres, reasonable conditions added to stop stuff going onto the highway. We can only do that because the access is in the application site. This doesn't include an access to the highway.
So on the general point, the requirement of the application requirement is that an application includes a plan which shows the land to which the application relates, which this does. In terms of the ability to impose a condition on land which is outside the application site, so a Grampian condition, that is a matter of confidence in the applicant's ability to do it. So the test in National Planning Practice Guidance is that you shouldn't impose a condition requiring works off-site if there is no reason, if there is no prospect at all of those works coming forward. So that's a high bar. In terms of the bridleway network here, as Ben said, the applicant's right of access or otherwise in this case seems to be disputed between the applicants and objectors. That is a separate legal matter between them. The bridleway surface, the bridleway insofar as the surface to the depth to perform its function, that's vested in the local highway authority. That's Westmoreland and Furness. We manage that surface on their behalf under the rights of way agency agreement, and if the applicant wanted to do works to the surface, that would need our permission through that process, but that's separate of the planning system.
Mark, can I just ask you again about when we refer to the main road, do we mean the main road, which is the road through Troutbeck that goes up to the Mortal Man? So does it stop being the main road when you turn off down to the pub?
Okay, so there are two primary routes through the village and the valley. On this plan, where the word site is, that's the A592. That's the road that you would use to go over Kirkstone if you could go over Kirkstone. The road that you can see on the left-hand side of the image, which is more sinuous, that is the single road tarmac county highway through the village itself, links from Townhead to Townfoot and back again.
So my question is, sorry if I've missed something. When we turn off the road that goes through the village, as opposed to the Kirkstone Pass road, when we turn off and turn, if I'm coming up from Windermere, when I turn right on the picture there, when does it stop being county highway? I know that when I drive up that road and then turn right to see people that I know on the red line, it always seems to me a pretty ropey bit of road after I've turned off the main road. So is that county road, or is it? To me, it almost seems like a private road.
I'll go back through the slides to the I think one of the first ones. That one. So Scott Brow, you'll see they're marked towards the top of the image. That's the county highway. That's the tarmac road. Winds around the west and north side of that group of dwelling houses. The network of routes which are used by vehicles serving the dwelling houses within that site are lanes which carry bridleways. There will be private rights available to certain users to take vehicles along those, but for the public, the right of access is by public right of way, public bridle way.
On highways.
So just and just I think just the one last thing, just as a reminder, because Ben's obviously cited there's planning history to this site. There've been 7 applications, including this one, 4 withdrawn, 2 refused, including decisions by this committee. Obviously, they were for more houses than are currently proposed, but in this committee's decision to refuse, you did not cite highways and access as a reason previously. So if that was to be a reason now, it would help me if there was some explanation as to why, what has changed. Thanks.
I'll go to Doug and then we'll come back. We do have the applicant's representative up, public speaking. Doug.
It was just clarification of the to's and fro's that we've had. When we come off the public highway, when we come off the public carriageway, it then the decision is based on that being a civil matter in the presentation that we've had. And I'm making it simplistic after the discussion that we've had of where things stop and where things start. The access is a civil matter, and any changes to that would be thus.
Yes, I would agree with that summary.
Any other questions for Ben? Ben, just a couple.
Mark,
Oh, sorry,
I do
go
have
Phil.
a question. I'm so sorry. This shows how inexperienced I am on this committee. But just remind me, what does it mean? What does local occupancy mean, and how do we define it? And what is would probably be a high-end property? Where's it written down?
Okay, you've got a bit of reading to do. I'm going to take you to condition 6, which is on the papers, which runs to nearly 2 pages of A4. That is the local occupancy condition. Essentially, it requires that any dwelling house which is constructed pursuant to a planning permission that we grant is occupied by somebody who has a local connection. That local connection is described in the condition, normally 3 years residency or 9 months employment in the locality defined. There are some other criteria for returnees or people who need to give or receive care, and locality in this context, in this part of the national park, would be defined as the area that used to be South Lakeland District Council, that lies within the boundaries of the Lake District National Park. So it's actually the most generous locality that we use. The rest of them are all based on distinctive areas. This one probably has the highest population of any of the distinctive areas. But yes, local occupancy conditions spelled out there.
Yeah, Phil, is it okay if Andrew and the team take you through local occupancy bits after the meeting or something? But they'll give you the full rundown. We've all been at it. Ben, I had a couple of questions. So this one was a similar sort of application was put in last year. Take down the old agricultural building, put up a house, and it was refused. What specifically is different in the design? Because the last one was refused due to non-traditional appearance and materials. Is there anything you can tell us how it's different? I know it's on its own right, this application.
Okay, I'm afraid I don't have the images of the refused permission in or refused application.
Just a flavour of what's changed.
Yeah, so essentially the proposal that we had last year was to take down the modern agricultural building and to erect a new dwelling house which looked like a modern agricultural building in its place. The current proposal remedies that. We felt that was unacceptable and harmful to perpetuate the existence of a building which had a non-traditional form, character and appearance. And as a result, the applicants have submitted a scheme which is more traditional, looks more like a house, and has traditional materials.
It's more slate and stone. Losing the agricultural building, the parish council suggests that there's going to be a loss there for agricultural use. We don't have any specific policy on losing agricultural buildings, not of this sort of modern nature.
That is correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Right, so we'll go into our public speaking. So our first public speaking is Mrs. Donson. So Mrs. Donson, it's you've seen it already. It's 5 minutes to speak. Just press the microphone button whenever you're ready. If you go over, we'll let you know, and if there might be some questions afterwards from the members.
So the planner thinks this large detached house on this protected and sensitive site meets local needs and has a vernacular design which will benefit the village of Troutbeck. I disagree and ask you to consider the following. Firstly, the house itself. Does this house fit the Sheena model for a modest 3-bed home? No, it does not. It is a large executive style 4-bed house labelled as 3. At 2,500 square feet, this house is easily twice the size of a typical 3-bed house and far exceeds that of a typical 4-bedder. We know why it's masquerading as 3 beds rather than 4. There's a 30% demand for 3-bed homes, but only 2% for 4. This time there's no ancillary building of garage and office space, so the footprint looks smaller. Yet the applicants previously wanted it. When will they try to add that on, and where? Is it really now a vernacular design? No. Those of you familiar with Troutbeck know that true vernacular design is not simply achieved by adding stone facing and slate. The proposal still does not reflect the form and detailing of the Heritage Grade 2 listed buildings in High Green. Secondly, planning opinions. One planner, Jackie Ratcliffe, was in favour of 5 houses on the site. The DCC disagreed. The appeal inspector said it was a special area which should be afforded great protection. Kevin Richards said even building on one part of the land, which is also the current proposed site, would have a negative impact on the whole site and recommended refusal. Ben Long now disagrees. So which is it? Is it an open green space of important landscape value, as stated in the Troutbeck Conservation and Management Appraisal Plan? Is it a protected habitat, a traditional orchard, according to DEFRA? Is it still one of the few open and undeveloped sites which give Troutbeck its character, as stated by the LDNPA, who also categorically stated that it should not be changed from agricultural to residential use? Surely the current planner cannot just ignore these designations and the statements of the LDNPA, the appeal inspector and his colleague, Kevin Richards, and decide they don't matter. And for what? A house that does not fit housing needs, has no vernacular architectural merit, brings harm to this special protected site and brings no benefit. If you can build here, you can build anywhere. Please recommend refusal. Even one residential dwelling on one part of the land with its domestic paraphernalia, lighting and parking will negatively impact the whole site. It changes the character of this agricultural land permanently. Thirdly, the future. The inconsistency of opinions by the planners of what constitutes harm and the ploys of the applicants present a serious worry. We know from previous proposals that the applicants want to build 5 houses on this site, plus the architect is published as saying her practice will get there in the end. If you agree with the current plan's decision and approve this substantial dwelling, residential use becomes established, and with it the danger of developmental creep. Protections must therefore be put in place. If not, who knows what the decision of the next planner might be? The site's character has been changed. The harm is done, so allow more. Build on the garden area, which has been the subject of past refusals. Build on the remaining open green space, which may have been allowed to deteriorate. So if you do approve, I urge you to restrict development on the whole site to one dwelling limited to the footprint of the existing building, and to insist that the garden area is kept as such and that the remaining land is protected and managed as meadow, grass and orchard. To conclude, this large house does not meet local needs nor reflect local vernacular character, conflicts with protections and previous conclusions about the sensitivity of the site, brings no benefit to outweigh the harm and should be refused. If you decide against this view, then any permission must include strong conditions to safeguard the rest of the site for the future. The access also along the bridleways is a material concern, particularly in Troutbeck. They are heritage assets and should be afforded protection under Policy 04. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Johnson. Any questions, members? No, Chris? No? Well, I've got a question. It's sort of related, more for Ben. It's about the size in the bedrooms. There was back to the floor plans. I noticed there's 3 bedrooms in the upper bit. So 3 bedrooms a landing. To turn it to 4 bedroom, you'd be looking at putting a bedroom on the ground floor, really. But it's more about the sizes. The guidance, this house is going to be 225 square meters. The Sheena, does it specifically say anything about sizes? It's got the demand for 2 to 3 bedroom houses.
So the information that we have regarding house size set out in the supplementary planning document relates to minimum house sizes.
Right.
So a minimum house size for a 3-bedroom dwelling might be in the region of 90 to 100 square meters. Now, this is bigger. This is a fair bit bigger than the minimum size. So as a matter of judgment, at some point, where do you stop? Where do you think that a 3-bedroom dwelling is so large that it does not contribute to meeting the identified housing needs of the locality? Now, we've had some cases recently where we've had dwellings of 300 square meters, and we've actually included a reason for refusal on size and housing need for those dwelling houses. We've had a couple on the same site where there were some which were 150, 190 square meters, and we were going, is that 150 is probably quite comfortably within, from 100 square meters at the minimum to where the maximum might reasonably be. The 190, is that? No, probably not. And this is again, it's at that upper end, but it's single house on a large plot. It's never going to be cheap. And that's not necessarily what the local occupancy is about. The local occupancy is about providing houses to make a balanced housing market, and it can include larger houses if the evidence is there, and it's a matter of judgment for the committee as to whether you conclude that this would meet a housing need.
So there's no hard guidance, it's a matter of judgment. Okay, so I was just clarifying that. Any questions for Mrs. Johnson before we go on to our next speaker? Thank you very much. No, you must have switched it off. Yeah. Thank you. So our next speaker is Ms. Frayne, who's the applicant's representative. So 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Good morning. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Rebecca Frayne, and I'm here on behalf of my son and daughter-in-law, Richard and Emma, who send their sincere apologies that they cannot be here today due to a health appointment as they're expecting their 2nd baby. I am very proud to speak for them today. My son is a local lad raised in Windermere. Our family roots in this area run very deep. And like many of you, we care greatly about the future of our communities in the Lake District. For the past 6 years, they have worked patiently and respectfully through the planning process in relation to this site in Troutbeck. with the aim of building a local occupancy home in the area. Throughout that time, they have listened carefully, adapted their proposals, and followed the guidance of planning officers at every stage. They recognise that there has been some local opposition, and we do understand that change can be difficult, particularly in such a special place. One concern that has been raised is the suggestion, if you can build here, you can build anywhere. But as you all know, far better than any of us, that simply isn't how the planning system works. If anything, the past 6 years have demonstrated the exact opposite, that every site, every application and every proposal is considered on its own individual merits against policy, context and careful professional assessment. So I would just like to briefly remind the committee of the merits of this particular site and proposal. Firstly, this application has now been recommended for approval by your professional planning officer for the second time. That recommendation had been made following detailed assessment against local and national policy, landscape, impact, design and housing need. Secondly, this is a site that has been identified as suitable for housing in a location that is in real need of local occupancy homes. As we all know, villages like Troutbeck are increasingly dominated by second homes and holiday lets. This proposal does not add to that problem. It helps to address it by providing a permanent home for a local family. And third, the design of the building itself is modest, thoughtful, and in keeping with the local vernacular architecture. Importantly, the proposal would actually reduce the overall built massing on the site, with the removal of the large and rather unsightly existing sheds, resulting in a visual improvement to the landscape. This is not speculative development. This is not overdevelopment. This is a carefully considered, policy compliant, locally rooted proposal for a single family home. After 6 years of careful work, consultation and revision, we truly hope that you will feel able to support your officer's recommendation and grant approval for this home. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Frayne. Any questions, Peter?
Thank you, Mark. Quick question. Do you know who owns the land on which the bridleways are?
I'm actually here just to read out a statement.
No problem.
I'm unable to give you detailed information.
The reason that I ask is because in Braithwaite, where I live, there is a similar situation, and my house actually has the same issue. It's a house surrounded by gravel roads, which are owned by the National Trust, but I don't actually have access to a highway. I wonder if it might be similar, but if you don't know, I don't know if Ben knows.
You'll have a right of way across them, I imagine, with your vehicle. So where do you? Okay, but you park your car in your house. Oh, this is by the by for this application. Okay, we'll talk about it later. Yeah.
What I can say is that I know my son would have considered very carefully the access and would not undertake this without careful consideration. He's dealt with many, many difficult accesses in the past, sensitively. That's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Any other questions, Ms. Frayne? No? Okay, thank you very much. Just before we get into it, Ben, I've got another question for you. Curtailage, if this was granted, what would the sort of garden area be? Because obviously if you've got a garden, you can do things like put all sorts of things in it, which you can't do with the sort of surrounding agricultural or orchard forestry land.
Okay, so we have proposed a condition to provide clarity in that respect. And I'm going to try and find it. Condition 5. The garden area of the dwelling house hereby permitted shall be limited to the area shown in white on this plan. So
it's around the house and the driveway.
To be explicit on that. If members are nervous about the question of ancillary buildings, garages, or other ancillary buildings following a permission for a single house here, which without a garage or ancillary buildings, you could consider
removing the
condition to remove permitted development rights, specifically for Class E of the permitted development order, which would ensure that the authority had control over new developments. And that's the point here in terms of the future of the site. The authority has control in the event that any further application for a dwelling house was submitted on this site. It would require a planning application, it would be advertised, it would be able to comment, it would come before committee in the normal way. We can't sensibly put in a prohibition on future development, but we can ensure that it needs planning permission. A new dwelling house would, but if you feel that you would need the confidence that any garage or ancillary outbuilding came through for a planning application, then a condition to remove development rights would be appropriate.
The reason I say is the parish council suggested that if permission were to be given, they would suggest it be restricted to one dwelling. However, we can't really prohibit that, but a future building would have to be applied for, and there's always the option to put a condition on to remove development rights, which would restrict outbuildings and things like that, which may harm the visual amenity of the area. Okay. Members who'd like to go first? Rick.
Looking at it from the point of view of the conservation area, it's apparent that removal of the existing buildings would enhance the conservation area. Is the erection of a new dwelling necessary to secure enhancement of the conservation area, or is it just simply removal of the existing buildings?
If you want me to treat that as a question rather than a comment, that's fine.
It sounded like a question.
Yeah, that's fine. Yes, removal of the agricultural buildings and to do nothing with the site would be fine, would be enhancement. That's certainly the case. The question that you might want to have in the back of your mind, probably rather than the front of your mind, is that likely to happen if you don't have any development which makes it happen? And does the proposed development to replace the modern agricultural buildings with a smaller stone and slate dwelling house, does that enhance the conservation area? That is a question that you need to attend to. Yeah.
But I wouldn't expect to grant planning permission for a new house just to get rid of all the untidy buildings in the national park.
In this particular case, it's a matter of your judgment as to whether the new dwelling house compared to the existing agricultural building, whether that amounts to preserving or enhancing the conservation area. You'll see I've made a conclusion in my report. It's for members to come to your own conclusions on that point.
Phil.
Sorry, Ben, thank you. There's a lot I don't understand about this. If this wouldn't be what we might have called a designated site, would it? Because they didn't have designated development sites within Troutbeck. Is that correct? It's more of a windfall site.
Yes, it would be a windfall site. It is not an allocated site. It's not an identified site in that respect. But if you use the old development plan terms, it's probably white land within a settlement. So it's land which doesn't have a specific designation. You'll see that the former orchard area, the areas to the east side of the track and where the buildings aren't, that has a limitation, has a designation. The site where the proposed dwelling would be located is essentially, I suppose you would call it, previously developed land. actually no, agricultural land is not, but it is. Let's call it white land. So within a settlement boundary.
So can I follow that one up? That if the current modern agricultural building were demolished, would that not then become the sort of thing that governments have been trying to get people to build on for years?
Should if the agricultural building were not there, this would still be a site that would be suitable in planning policy terms for the erection of a dwelling or dwellings. The question then is, does this proposed development preserve or enhance the conservation area?
Peter.
Thanks, Mark. So just looking back through the list of objections from the parish council, which is similar to the other neighbourhood objections, and that the objector described, I think that there is demand for a house of 3 or 4 bedrooms, as evidenced by the fact that somebody wants to build it, and the local guidelines do suggest that there is clear demand for that. I don't agree with the loss of agricultural function concern. The incremental development risk we can control against. So for me, the most important considerations are specifically related to the design of this proposal and whether it is in keeping and whether it is appropriate for the site. I think, Ben, did you describe it, or was that a previous application, forgive me, as a modern design but in a vernacular style? Did you say that, or was that a previous application? I can't remember.
Let me read what I've said, and then I'll tell you what I concluded.
I mean, just while you're, I'll summarise, which is I think
524. The proposed design and materials palette now proposes a modern house using traditional forms and materials.
Okay.
Is it a copy of a vernacular farmhouse? No. Is it a modern house using simple gabled forms, slate walling, slate stone walling, slate roof, and generally modestly sized openings? Yes, it is. And in that context, is it acceptable? That's a matter of judgment for yourselves. Does it have to be a copy of a Troutbeck farmhouse?
Does it comply with the design guide?
In my view, it does. Taking the design guide and as a whole, the design guide is very good at talking about. You just take the context of the site and you follow it through. And not everything has to be a copy of a building which is standing next to it. And in this case, there's that separation between this site, which essentially is self-contained, and then the other houses which are nearby, but you don't really see them side by side, cheek by jowl. It's in the general context, but I think this site can stand a building which is essentially a modern house, but uses traditional materials.
Peter, you look like you had your finger ready to go.
I was just going to make an observation, which is a rhetorical question, which is, would a copy of a Troutbeck farmhouse be acceptable to those objecting, or are there broader issues of anything there would be unacceptable? And that's a rhetorical question, really.
I think the objections are partly on design, the object on loss of function, the size of it. Hard to characterize, I suppose. Anything may be applicable. Rick.
Mike, I haven't been on this site, so I don't know what it's like on site, but looking at the photographs and everything that's available, if we were going to accept the principle of a dwelling anywhere on this site, I think it would be far more appropriate for it to be closer linked to the village and moved to, is it Haystacks, the property? The square property that's shown on there, if a dwelling was located much closer up towards the village, I think it would work better in terms of the village, the relationship with the village. And I think the design and appearance of the property is of concern and its siting is of concern. And I think a dwelling could be better sited on the land available to meet the demand if that demand's there. I think it's in the wrong place on the site.
Yeah, it is replacing something that's already there, though. I wouldn't necessarily go though if this wasn't approved.
Removal of the existing building doesn't justify putting another building on that site because that site is not suitable for a building. It's harmful. Therefore, if we're going to put a dwelling anywhere on the site, is there a better location for it? And I think there is.
Peter, what's that?
Ben, could you just remind us, please, of the extent to which it is or it isn't screened and visible from elsewhere in the village? Okay, I'll run through some of those photographs. Well, so from the aerial photograph, you can see that there's that belt of trees and so on the western side, including those 3 tall conifers that you pick out in the various photographs. And to the eastern side, you have that former hedgerow, which sits at the top of a break of slope coming up to the side. So those are those tall conifers which separate it from the existing traditional buildings at High Green. Some planting within the site, and then that's that belt of trees on the east side of the site. So the wider site photographs. So that's the view looking up from essentially the A591 towards the site from the south. Haystacks you can see there, but the site's tucked in at the behind that screening. This view, you can see the house, see the agricultural building. So that's the agricultural building. You can see those tall conifers again, identify the site. You would see the house from this viewpoint in that context at that distance. From the village top road near the Mortal Man, no, you're not going to see it. It's tucked in behind buildings, behind trees and what have you. So yeah, it's easier to see from a distance, from particular distant views, than it is from close up.
Okay. Any other contributions, members? We're in our discussion now. It's a conservation area. It's quite a special area up there. Although some of us have been up there on a site visit before, at least once and possibly twice. It's got a special nature to it, that area, and that was pointed out in that previous appeal for a different application. So ultimately, we've got an application in front of us to demolish that building and replace it with the house that was shown in the plan. So we have to, and we could speculate where it might be better to be placed, but that's the application in front of us today. We have to decide, is that acceptable, bearing in mind all the representations we've had. Oh, Rick, yeah.
In my opinion, the siding design, the extent of domestic curtilage is harmful to the character and appearance of the locality and fails to enhance the character and appearance of the surrounding conservation area. And for that reason, I would recommend refusal.
Okay, so we'll take that as a proposal. Anyone wish to second that? Alternate that? Gonna have to have something. Peter, you look like you want to speak? Okay, yeah. Do you want to start us on that?
Well, so and hence the reason for prolonging the discussion. I'm really torn.
Yeah.
Actually. So I reiterate, I've made some of my points in the earlier statement. I should have made them now, really. But there is demand for this size of house. We can control the other developments. For me, it all comes down to, is that design suitable, sympathetic, and does it enhance the area? And on that note, I think that
we should consider that extensive work has taken place with the applicant and our officers to get to something that our officer is recommending. So that does hold weight for me. It always holds weight for me, of course, but that's our officer recommending. But
yeah.
can we have some? Can we have some other thoughts, guys? Because I'm really torn on this.
Phil.
Yes, I mean, knowing the area very slightly, I recognise that there's quite a lot of development that of a modern style that has taken place in that area. I noticed because a friend of ours lives very near to that, every time I'm going up Garburn Pass, I look out and try and see their house, and I never manage. And I thought that the pictures from Garburn Pass, really, you've got to be pretty enthusiastic to look over to try and spot a house. It's a long, long way away, and it's a very, very well hidden site. And does it add to the conservation area? To be honest, from my knowledge of the site, I wouldn't have thought it makes any impact on the conservation area at all, because it's so well hidden. And so in that sense, I must say I personally am inclined, because of the officer's hard work, to accept the officer's recommendation. It is a very well hidden site, and I don't know that it would actually have that much impact on the greater sense of Troutbeck.
Thanks, Phil. Anyone else? Doug?
Thank you, Chair. I take on board what my esteemed colleague has just said about how difficult it is to look at from a distance, but equally the importance of a townscape in a conservation area is how it appears to the conservation in the conservation area itself, and how it feeds the dynamic of that, one of a better way of putting it, restricted area when you are in it, not when you're looking at it from the other side of a fell, when you're tramping out Garburn Pass or whatever. It's the atmosphere that it creates as a whole, and so for me the question is not where on the site it is. I'm going for what Peter was saying about a discussion rather than myself having got to a decision myself, because it is so much in the air as to whether it does protect and enhance the conservation area. Removing a couple of not that pretty buildings in order to build one that is not as detrimental as previous applications have been is not necessarily something that excites a decision for refusal, but it's very much an individual choice based on not only visual amenity, not only all the things that we've been discussing, but the feeling of context within the actual conservation area. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. So we have a proposal from Rick to refuse. Does anybody wish to second that proposal? Another question first, yeah.
The objector highlighted divergence of opinion on this application to the previous application from officers. Can you just remind us of, or give us some more background as to why our position has changed? Was it entirely due to the scale of the previous application?
I think that comes down to a point which I'm looking for it. 5.23. I'm aware of my colleague's conclusion in the report on a previous application that the character of the land to the west side of the track has the same character as that on the east side of the track, and say it serves the same function. So it's that left-hand side end of the side where you'll see the important open space in the conservation area is the green there. And my colleague took the view, my colleague who was sitting next to me here, in his report took the view that the land which runs to the top of there, where the track runs through, has the same character as the land below it, and then that you should give that some weight. That was in the context of this proposal, or a similar proposal with a similar footprint, where development was being proposed more densely on the site. So that, I think, is the nature of that difference of opinion, and that's the character of the site. So does the land to the right have the same contribution as the land to the left in terms of that general openness of the conservation area? And my colleague took that view. I'm looking at an application for that, and I'm taking the view that does not adversely affect the openness of the conservation area, especially if we put a condition on to say that we have control over where garages, sheds, etc. get built.
Hey members, I'll go through it again. We have one proposal to refuse. Anybody wish to second that? Anybody wish to put an alternative? We will need to do something else. We'll be here forever.
So I'm happy to support the officer's recommendation with the conditions attached.
Is that the condition to remove permitted development? So, okay, so we'll take that as a proposal from Phil to grant. So 1 for, 1 against.
If we pursue or if we vote in agreement to approve, can we just, I'm concerned about that, the access issue with regard, not the legality of access, but the practicalities of construction vehicles accessing it. So you say there's a construction method statement. Given that I've not read that.
I think there isn't one, is there, Ben?
No, you said
there's. Oh,
there is. Sorry, it's referred to in paragraph point 2, condition 2 at the end there.
Have we on the
I
condition?
don't have the details of it to hand or in my head.
Is it in the condition?
So in condition 2, there's a construction method statement which has been submitted and is
referenced
incorporated in the condition, but we don't have a specific condition which requires the submission of and approval of a more detailed construction method statement. But again, I don't have it in front of me.
So Peter, are you suggesting a more detailed highways?
I suppose that, given, with all due respect, Ben, given that we're not getting the details of what's in that to reassure us, can we put a condition that it is submitted, that a more detailed conditions statement is submitted?
Yes, so I've got the construction method in front of me now. It doesn't capture that point about vehicle routing that you are talking about. It covers parking and deliveries in a general sense, but it doesn't deal with the specifics of the access that you cited. So yes, we would need another condition.
What we want to avoid is an Atkinson lorry dumping loads of pallets on somewhere that isn't the applicant's land.
Would that be okay if you feel if that was added, if be added as an amendment? Is that you seconding it then, Peter?
Yes.
Okay, anything alternative before we go? Because we've got a proposer and a seconder to grant, subject to those 2 conditions. We haven't had the refusal seconded. No? Okay. No?
Can we just have an outline again on what the additional conditions are? Because
So
we've moved them around for the last half an hour.
So where we are at the minute is we've got a proposal and a second to grant permission subject to an additional condition restricting permitted development on the site and requesting a more detailed construction method statement with an emphasis on deliveries and highways access.
Can we just check that we have covered all of the conditions that were asked for by the parish council or the objectors?
The council suggested, if it were to be granted, restrict development of single one-off dwelling only. We can't technically
So,
do
so,
that.
so Eileen, can we just spend 2 minutes just checking that?
Yeah.
The ones that we can, we are.
Limit any auxiliary domestic structures, so the permitted development right removal would do that. Protect, designate open green space for incorporation into domestic curtailage. Again, you would have to apply for permission to extend your garden into that green bit of surrounding land. So effectively there's controls on all of those.
And do members think that we should add an external lighting condition my favourite subject?
Is that what you're going to say? Do you wish to stick that in as an amendment?
I would wish for consistency.
Right.
I would like to propose that we do.
Is that okay, Phil, as a proposer? Lighting condition. So that's pre-approval of external lighting. Okay. Do you want them again, Doug?
Perish the thought because Peter might suggest something else.
Okay, so where we are, we've got a proposal, we've got a seconder to grant, subject to those 3 extra conditions. All those in favour? All those against? All those abstain?
So that's 4 in favour. That's approved with conditions.
Okay, thank you very much, members. Good discussion. Our next application, Ben, you'll be back with us soon, won't you? But we're doing it in public speaking order. So our next one is number 8. Okay. Well, when Chris comes back, we'll start number 8. That's the Brow Station Road, Coniston. Emma's come down to tell us about it. We've got number 8, number 2, and number 7. Number 7 doesn't have public speaking, so we take that last. Right, welcome back. So we have got number 8 on the list now, the Brow Station Road, Coniston. Emma's come to tell us all about this one.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks plan permission for the change of use of an annex to a short-term holiday let. The application is before members today because Coniston Parish Council object to the application on the grounds that the annex appears to be as unsuitable as an independent dwelling as it was when it was considered and planning permission was granted for the annex in 1989. They consider that if the annex is deemed suitable as an independent dwelling now, that the use should be subject to a local occupancy condition. This slide shows the application site outlined in red, which is where the annex is located, down a private road. The private road serves 3 properties. The Brow, which is the applicant's dwelling, which is annotated on that plan, and that's sited approximately 30 metres to the north of the annex. The immediately adjoining neighbouring property is Underbrow, and then just opposite that is Lowbrow. This is a photograph showing the northern side of the annex building. Upon entering the doorway on the left-hand side of this photograph, there are stairs leading to the first floor and a hallway on the right. Off the hallway, there is a small bedroom immediately to the right, a bathroom next, and then a second bedroom. There is no inbuilt cupboard space within those bedrooms. On the first floor, there is a small landing with a kitchen to the rear and a living room to the front. Within that kitchen, there isn't a washing machine and it accommodates a small table. The internal floor space is less than the recommended for a permanent dwelling as set by the government space standards. This photograph shows the southern side of the annex building. The raised area of garden on the left-hand side of the photograph is associated with the annex, together with the parking space to the right-hand side. The white building in the centre of the photograph is the Brow, and that's the applicant's. Or the pink dwelling is the Brow, the applicant's dwelling. This is the garden belonging to the Brow and includes the area between the annex and the Brow as shown in that photograph. There are outlooks from the windows on the sides of the annex building to the left-hand side into the garden and vice versa. The garden belonging to the Brow also includes the garden beyond the annex, so extending to the rear, to the centre of that photograph. And you can see there the raised area of grass which is associated with the annex. This photograph was taken from a path to the west of the property, looking down on the garden belonging to the Brow, between the annex and the Brow. It shows the neighbouring properties also, so the white building and the stone building in the centre of the photo. And this photograph again is taken from the path, looking down on the garden, also belonging to the Brow, but extending south beyond the annex. So I consider that the main issue for you to consider is whether the proposed development is acceptable in principle. Coniston is a rural service centre, and I consider the proposal is in accordance with our spatial strategy, which directs new development to rural service centres. Policy 18 of our local plan supports proposals for the reuse of existing buildings for short-term holiday letting, where they would not utilise a building that is suitable for providing local need or local needs housing, affordable local needs housing. In summary, the reasons why I consider that this annex is not suitable for use as a permanent dwelling include the internal floor area, which would not amount to a good standard of living, the proximity to the neighbouring dwelling's outdoor amenity space due to the positioning of the annex building in the middle of the garden belonging to the Brow, which could result in overlooking, and that the vehicle access goes through the garden belonging to the Brow. Therefore, I do not consider that an opportunity for a local needs dwelling would be lost if this proposal was granted. But because of the constraints, I consider that the holiday letting use would only be acceptable if operated wholly in association with the existing dwelling, the Brow, so that the application has control of the usage. I'm therefore recommending approval of the application subject to the conditions set out in my report, particularly noting the one that ties the use of the building to the Brow. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Any questions for Emma? Peter.
It falls below the government guidelines for a 2-bedroomed dwelling house, but it would suffice as a 1-bedroom. You could have a bedroom and an office. Is that right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, it could be a little sort of studio type apartment. If there's no more questions, I'll go on to our public speaking. Well, we have Mrs. Taylor here. Do you want to speak? It says for questions, but do you want to speak? Or okay, go for it, Peter.
Have you tried to market this as a long-term let?
No, I haven't. That's not something I would want to do, just because it could cause conflict with the building. If someone lived there permanently, we'd have to share parking spaces and driveways, and also it would be an intrusion on anyone's privacy for us to enjoy the full length of the garden, and also the overlooking from the windows.
Andrew, I think you want to say something.
Just to say that at the moment it's only permitted for use as an annex, so to even occupy it as a long-term let independently of the main dwelling would require a planning application as well.
As an independent, yeah. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Okay, members. The main crux of it, as highlighted by the parish council, is this building suitable as a permanent dwelling rather than being too small or unsuitable for that. What do you think? It's 56 square meters internally, 2 stories, currently set out as 2 bedrooms. I think that's just for a 2-bedroom dwelling. That's slightly like 2 square meters under the government guidance, but for a 1-bed, it's okay. Rick?
I think one of the things to take into account is the siting as well as the actual nature of the accommodation that's provided. Yes, I could live in there as a house, but in terms of driving through other people's property, independent parking, independent garden area, it's not there, and therefore it wouldn't be acceptable as a house. And this provides a viable use for it. And I would support the officer's recommendation.
Anyone else? I'll take that as a proposal, Rick. Anyone else? Anyone wish to second that? Go for Chris. Yeah. Any alternatives? Any other comments? Okay, go for that. Proposed by Rick, seconded by Chris. That we grant as per officer's recommendation. All those in favour? Is that a hand up, Peter? No. Okay. All those against? All those abstaining?
That's 1 abstention, 5 in favour. That's approved.
Okay, thank you very much, members. Thank you very much, Emma. Jumping back to number 2, we're at Threlkeld station site. Abigail's come back to take us through this one.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks permission for the installation of solar panels on 2 roofs at Threlkeld station site, plus associated trenching works. This application is before committee because the property is owned by the Lake District National Park Authority. Since writing the report, we received a consultee response from the Parish Council who state they have no comments or objections on this proposal. So the site sits south of Threlkeld and the A66. The site is a former railway station and goods yard for Threlkeld Quarry, and it's situated on the Keswick Threlkeld Trail. The site was acquired by the authority in 1984 and is now used as the Northern Office. So looking at the proposed elevations, the main office building is to the west with a workshop building to the east, and they're connected by a glazed walkway. Both buildings have slate pitched roofs, and there are existing inset solar panels on a section of the office roof on the southern elevation. The proposed panels would cover the south elevation of both the main office and the workshop roof. They would stand 100 to 150 millimetres above the roof surface. And there are also associated trench works to connect the panels to an existing electricity shed to the northwest of the site. And the existing concrete surface would be reinstated once these have been completed. So this is the main view of the site from the road to the south, and the existing solar panels are highly visible. Another view further along the site, the solar panels being proposed in this application will be sited just to the east of the existing. This is off the road inside the car park, looking at the same elevations, and you can see the workshop a bit more there on the east. On the right hand side, you can see the hedging, which is along the roadside, which would largely screen the views of the workshop building. Coming around to the other side of the building, looking at the north elevation, this is where the proposed trench works would connect across the car park from the main building to the electricity shed, which you can just see on the left hand side there. So in summary, I consider the main issue to be the impact of the solar panels on the character of the area. But given the relatively modern nature of the building and the existing visible solar panels, I consider that the additional panels would have no adverse impact on the character of the area. Overall, I recommend that the application be approved subject to the conditions set out in the report. Thanks.
Abigail, any questions on this one? No, we do technically have public speaking, Mr. Sleeth. You've seen it all before. 5 minutes to speak if you wish to use the full 5 minutes. Just whenever you're ready, just press the button.
So yeah, thank you for the opportunity to come and speak in favour. I should sort of point out that we've opted to go for a planning application rather than permitted development, just because we wanted to maximise the area of the solar array that we could put here. So this application is for a solar photovoltaic array, which forms part of the carbon reduction section of our sustainability strategy, which was endorsed by the Resources Committee in September. I should just point out I'm a sustainability advisor for the authority, if you don't know me. So the proposal is for a 30.24 kilowatt peak system, which is forecast to generate nearly 27 megawatt hours of clean electricity per year, which is the equivalent of 5.3 tonnes of carbon emissions per year. So the array will be connected to our electric vehicle charge points and therefore contributing to our self-sufficiency in renewable energy and our overall net zero target. So when the existing solar array was designed as part of the new office building in 2011, the scale of that was limited by the site's anticipated demand for electricity and the criteria governing the feed-in tariff scheme in existence at the time. That feed-in tariff scheme is no longer in place, and our electricity consumption has increased due to the replacement of diesel vehicles with electric vehicles, hence the need to increase the amount of self-generated renewable electricity on site. So this improved self-sufficiency for electricity is also forecast to save the authority around £3,500 a year in electricity, helping to make us more financially secure and less prone to energy price fluctuations, which is an increasingly important consideration in a time of such international turmoil. So after a payback period of around 8.5 years, this would represent a net cash saving. Inasmuch as the new array will be visible to passers-by, we believe that this installation represents a visual demonstration of the authority's commitment to tackling the climate crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Just out of interest, what's the lifespan of the panels now?
It's about 25 years.
Do you know what, I don't suppose you've picked a manufacturer yet. Do you know which country these ones will be manufactured in?
They are manufactured in China.
Most of them are.
As our vast majority of solar panels.
Okay. If there's no more questions, that's it. Thank you very much. So members, what do you think of this one? We all know this building. solar panels? Who wants to? Rick?
I can't say that the application would cause any harm, and I would support the proposal.
Yeah, limited harm. Okay. Anyone wish to second that? Doug? Any alternatives? No. Proposed by Rick, seconded by Doug. All those in favour?
That's unanimously approved.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Abigail. Just one more. Ben's back. And we're going to Ambleside, number 22, Fisherbeck Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an application for the extension of a bungalow in Fisherbeck Park, which is a 20th century development of houses, flats and bungalows towards the south east corner of Ambleside. So location is as this plan here. You can see it on the larger scale plan there. At the southern end of the estate of Fisherbeck Park. So it's a detached bungalow in a collection of similar properties. The flats are those at Badger's Rake, and the houses at the eastern end of the site, that kind of terraced and detached row, they're two-storey houses. So the character and appearance, this is number 22. It is a rendered tile roofed building. This row of properties originally had a flat roofed single story garage attached to that entrance elevation, as this property still does. You can see the next one up, number 24, has had that replaced with a gabled extension. The proposal here is to replace that flat roofed single story garage with a gabled extension. There's also a terrace proposed to the south of the property on the back elevation facing the fields. You'll see that the gabled extension in this case, due to the fall of the land and the underbuild, achieves a low upper floor gallery snug living space at the upper level. So this is the design and appearance of the proposal. The existing bungalow above with its flat roofed garage on the front elevation, to be replaced by this extension, which provides accommodation at 2 floors but retains the same eaves and ridge height as the existing bungalow. There's a proposal for a feature 2-story porch there with that glazed section above, and then alterations to the windows of the building which would otherwise be permitted development. Terrace at the back is a raised and glass balustraded terrace, taking account of the underbuild at this end of the property. So the rear elevation, as you say, it's a simple bungalow. The gallery, flat roof, terrace area, balustraded terrace area on that side of the building. In terms of the side elevation facing the neighbour, you go from the low single-story garage to this larger pitched roofed extension, but with limited openings on that side. Character and appearance, this is the rear of the building, the relationship between 22 in the foreground, which is the applicant site, and 24, which is the neighbouring house, which has been remodelled. You'll see that there's mutual overlooking between the house above and the rear garden of number 22 already. I consider that the provision of a terrace in this location does not make that position any worse. So the effect on residential amenity I do not see as harmful. This elevation is not visible. There is a possibility that you could see it from the laid up to Skelgill Woods, but I think it's probably unlikely due to a swell in the land in between. And even if you could see it, it would be acceptable in the context of the rears of that estate of bungalows. Front elevation, you've got that existing arrangement where the flat roofed extension, scale and massing, the extension would be very similar to that which you can see on number 24 behind, which is the neighbour has done something similar, but only has accommodation on the one floor because the fall of the land is slightly different. Elevation this way, again, there would be a gabled extension with that porch detail visible in that elevation, and parking provision would be provided to the left hand side of the drive there in what is currently garden area. Looking up at it, a gable would project towards you in place of that single story garage, and you would be able to see the pitched roof porch detail from that view. Looking back across again, that's where you'd see that largely blank side elevation, again that greater massing in that location. So in terms of character and appearance, my conclusion is that this proposed development is satisfactory, and it reflects similar alterations and extensions which have taken place elsewhere in the estate. In terms of residential amenity, there is a concern that the gable window of the upper floor of the extension would cause overlooking to the houses opposite. The house opposite, number 21 there, has this raised terrace and French windows in the front of it, but the distance between the two is in the region of 21 metres, and the existing terrace and patio doors are on the front of the house, clearly open to public view from anybody passing by or accessing their properties. So I conclude that the effect on overlooking would not be unacceptable. Just going through a couple of the examples of extensions that have been either approved and built or not approved and not built. So this is the neighbour 24. This is the opposite view of it. You can see the flat roof garage of 22 beyond, and you can see that number 24 have done something very similar, but that it only has a single story because it doesn't have that underbuild at this end of the house, but it has a similar massing coming off the same eaves and ridge height as the existing bungalow. The top corner of the site, there was a proposal to replace that house with this one. It was refused on design grounds, and an appeal was also dismissed. So the inspector agreed with us that that was not acceptable in that context, being too different, out of character. And similarly, we had an application to put a two-storey side extension onto number 23. That one was refused, largely on the grounds of the filling in the gap between it and 21 and a sense of overbearing dominance of that property. My view is that that does not apply in this case. There is sufficient space around, and the scale and massing is reasonable. The design I consider to be appropriate. I consider it does not have an acceptable effect on residential amenity, so recommendation is approved.
Thanks, Ben. Questions for Ben? No. So you've highlighted, because one of the parish council's concerns is that it will affect the uniformity of the estate. However, not all of those houses are the same, because some have been extended and some were built slightly different in the first place. So we've had two-story extensions already within that road. Is that right?
So this row, if you look at the block plan in the bottom corner there, those four houses will have been built to be identical. So when they were first built, they would have been identical.
Right. Okay.
24 that you can see behind the tree there, behind the camper van there, that has been extended in a similar fashion to the current one. But yeah, so the scale and massing of that is the same as is proposed at number 22. But because the access into number 22 is up a few steps, by going down a few steps,
Appearance is different.
you can get a ground floor and a first floor in the extension to 22 within the same massing that you have at 24.
Yeah. I'm just trying to understand where the parish council's coming from. I mean, this isn't a conservation area, so you wouldn't expect all the buildings to be of a special nature that they'll tie together. So yeah, the effect of this one isn't different. This build, it won't be necessarily different to things that have already happened in the nearby area. Okay. Okay, no public speaking. Anyone want to put their opinions forward? Right, I'm going to pick. Starting on my left, I'll go Chris, because he's got the same shirt as me.
No, for the mic, I'll reserve my comments on the porch. No, I'll move with the officer's recommendations.
Okay, anyone else? Rick?
The design and appearance is commensurate with the rest of the estate, and I would second the approval.
Okay, proposal by Chris, seconded by Rick. I will go as per officer's recommendation. All those in favour?
That's unanimously approved.
Okay, thank you very much, Ben. So that's all our applications done, unless I've missed one. So our next bit on the agenda is the delegated planning applications. Any comments there? Any questions? Delegated compliance, enforcement, responses to neighbouring authorities, appeals lodged, appeals decided. There's just one there that was in Ambleside that was dismissed. And then the tree preservation orders, which are all correct. And that's it. Peter.
Just one other item, if I may. In our pack of slides and papers, I noticed that across the authority we're having some reformatting changes, and I understand some of the reasons why. The schedule of applications is, however, used to be on just one single side of A4, and it now stretches to 3 or 4. Could I ask that it is either reinstated as a single page table, or if you need to have it in that format for other reasons, for accessibility, we still have that single page at the back of the pack or at the very beginning of the pack, because it's very helpful to just go straight to that page and see what we've got to deal with when we get the papers and refer back to it constantly, which is what I do.
I took extensive advice from accessibility guidelines and Lake District policy on communications. I was told that the issue, I think, is tables have to be removed, and the formatting was set up in a tabular form, so you could have some information here and some information there, restricting the actual length of the document, and also everything had to be 1.5 spaced and the Arial font increased. So that has actually what I think has led to the minutes looking longer, the schedule of applications looking longer.
That's all very good. And could we still have a one-page summary, please?
I'm guessing the original one's done for the accessibility software, so it can read it, and then because there's buttons you can click on your browser and it shows it.
Yeah, so we can meet the accessibility need with all of the information on the summary, but it's still very helpful for us to have as a summary the name, the number, whether it's a refuse or accept. So I think we need to achieve both aims. One-page summary for us, and then the other.
Okay, can I clarify, because the advice from the authority solicitor was that anything going into the public domain had to comply with the accessibility requirements. Yes, and is it the agenda or the minutes you are?
Neither. It's the one-page summary of what the list of applications that we've got and whether they're approved or reject.
Okay,
Okay.
So if Andrew knows what I'm asking for.
Yep.
Rather than if can I ask you guys to meet both, Helen, if you can meet both needs, then that would be brilliant, and I'm sure you can.
Yes, it does come from Demis, but
Yeah, I understand the ask. We've heard the reasons. It sounds like a request to present the information that we have additional to what's here, which is accessible in one way, to present it in a different way, which is accessible in a different way. So we'll just present it twice.